This that new media company covering everything. I'm talking that news you ain't heard of, cause you know it's getting buried. Social justice, yeah, the stuff you need to know about. Fucking politics that the corporate news won't cover. No, they don't think that you could see under, but you can now, cause the people we cover, they may not be famous, but their stories should be heard. Yeah, every voice matters, we should rise and fall together, and that's why.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Friday. You've made it this far. Yay, you. Way to go. As many of us aren't doing so well, but I just want to say, in case you need to hear this, because I know I did, you look fabulous. You're amazing. And what a champ you are. You made it to Friday. So good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is Hair of the Dog. I am Carrie Barber. You are watching Digital Liberation Front, and I would like to now introduce my lovely and talented co-host who happens to be located in Canada, and I am getting more jealous by the day. This is Andy Kennedy. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Gary, and I would just remind you that you can be as jealous as you want, but when it comes to later in the year, around November, when everything starts to freeze, you'll regret that decision.
Oh no, not this one. I was born in the UP. I lived in the UP for a number of years. I now live in Chicago. It gets cold here. Spent a number of years in Ohio. Ohio gets cold. Doesn't get snow, it gets ice. So I'm ready for it. Free healthcare. Woo! Which, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, and poutine.
And poutine. Yeah, poutine. What was it? The most. What was it? The most hockey or the most Canadian headline was the day that two hockey fans were sitting in the stands and an errant hockey puck flew over the guard and landed in their poutine.
Right,
It
right,
made the news.
and they didn't stop eating it.
No, oh no. You get a souvenir with your poutine. That's all it was.
The most Canadian picture ever taken was of a drive-through window at Tim Hortons. And if Americans don't know, Tim Hortons is our equivalent of Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. And the cars not being able to move because of a full-size beaver standing in the drive-through.
Getting his Timmies on. He knows. Yeah.
Slap that tail.
That's funny. So yeah, we're Canada's looking better and better by the day. And what was it? I'm drawing a blank, but Canada said some. Not only have you closed the border. Oh, this was it. Not only has Canada closed the border for American tourists and all of this, but they just announced that they no longer consider the U.S. a safe third option location for immigrants and asylum seekers. And everybody in the United States went, yeah, you're right. So,
Yeah, can't argue with that logic. Sorry.
yeah, and I was talking to a friend yesterday, and yesterday was a very much a down day for me, just because I'm doing some research for a story, and I think that I think that my thesis is going to be X, Y, and Z, and the more that I start digging and answering my own questions, the more the hole just gets deeper and worse to the point where I was talking to a girlfriend. I was like, there was one time a few years ago where I had donated to the Texas secession fund so that they could separate from the United States and actually be an independent country, because I totally support that, Texas. Now I'm like, I think we need a full-on divorce. Because the more that I was digging up on people, and I'll go through some of it today, I don't want to bring anybody down, but the more I was digging up on these people and their long history in the federal government. So it's like William Barr didn't just get here. He's been serving in this capacity in one form or another since Reagan. So he served under both Bushes and Obama. So these people have had a really long time to set up the policies and scenarios that we see today. So to me, it was like, there's no reforming this. And yesterday, I'll admit, I was to the point, I was like, it's time for a divorce. We just take those southern states and wish them the best. It's not you, it's me. It's totally me.
That's cool that you Costanza-sized that. That was very good. I was going to say that bar serving under both bushes. It says that's appropriate considering what you usually find under a bush.
Well, it's kind of the same thing. So before we get started, I just want to let everyone know. Hi, Pamela. Good morning. Pamela knows this is a live and interactive show. So if you have comments, questions, critiques, just stay off my hair today. It's a bad hair day. But everything else is totally fair game. Let's talk about it. And we welcome our MAGA brothers and sisters and even our blue MAGA. Come on in. Let's talk about it. Family, right? At least for a little while until maybe we do get a divorce. So we'll see how that goes. But
can't wait for that custody battle.
Yeah. Who gets the dog? Okay, so I live in Chicago, and so this is part of my angst because it's already started. And you and I covered some of this here, this march up to this moment. Like the one weekend where Chicago hit 102 shooting incidents. That's unheard of. And when you we went through the media report and you could see the only time they named a victim was when they had a Hispanic sounding last name, and there was one. They didn't talk about the neighborhoods where they happened, which were largely gentrified neighborhoods, mostly integrated with a diverse population, mostly white. And then the vehicle they mentioned, I'm like, come on now, let's be honest. That's either a rental or a white person's driving this car because ain't nobody else driving this damn blue Honda thing, right? So for all intents and purposes, it looks like manufactured consent in the media, manufactured propaganda in the messaging, and then we're not taking a look at who is actually doing these things. We have already seen it's not Antifa per se, but white people trying to elevate and instigate. So all of this has been happening in Chicago and in New York and in other places, but we're supposed to believe now that it's these peaceful protesters and black and brown people who are doing all the shooting and things like this, right? More so than normal.
Yeah, and even like, I mean, I'll refer people back to the video that we shared here last night on Digital Liberation Front with stringerharris, who was saying that, you know, the media loves to use black on black crime as a narrative, right? And he was absolutely right. There is no such thing as black on black crime. There's just crime. Right? It's like using the term reverse racism.
Doesn't exist.
Which is what? Not racism? You know?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
If a person of color doesn't like white people because of the color of their skin, you can call that racism. I would call that being angry at being, you know, tromped on for 400 years, but, you know, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But it's these gaslighting talking points that people believe without thinking about the origins or where they come from. And it's insane. All you have to do is apply a little bit of thought to it, and you understand that it's bullshit. Right?
That's exactly right. And you bring up a good point. So I'm going to make sure that the stringerharris goes out again today, because I feel like, especially here in Chicago, where we are absolutely seeing a bunch of, especially in social media, a bunch of created faux accounts and out-of-towners invading our social media pages, especially like Chicago Black Lives Matter, with all of those false narratives about black on black crime and so it's like this coordinated effort to demoralize and control the narrative. So I think Stringer's interview was a good way to push back on what this is actually about. And it is about constitutional rights, due process, and equal protection. If you're going to argue against those two being applied equally to all citizens, now we have a problem. And that is exactly what you're talking about, Andy, with the gaslighting and everything else. They're trying to get away from that valid argument, which is the core of what people are out protesting about. And they're trying to make it about all these other little things, which are not valid. So some of those we want to go through today. And of course, I have lots of good material for the class so that we can get through this basic civics lesson that I think we all need to hear, right? So we'll start with Portland before.
Yeah, hang on a second. Lights.
Yeah. Somebody wheel in the TV on the cart. Yep. That was like the best day in elementary school when they brought in that stupid little TV. So, okay, so we're going to start with basic civics lessons on the First Amendment, right? So in the First Amendment in the United States, we always talk about freedom of speech, freedom of religion. So back it up just a little bit. In elementary school, we were taught freedom of speech, meaning the government cannot infringe upon your free speech. Now, if I say something batshit crazy, Andy certainly could pop me in the nose because there are consequences. Andy is not the government, right? So it's just the government cannot infringe upon speech. They also cannot infringe upon religion, right? So you can pray in the public square, but you cannot, get in my face and say that I can't worship the way I want to. So kudos to the American Satanic Church for teaching us all about that, because I think they do a great job. I am not a Satanist in any way, but they are always out there to help educate people on freedom of religion. But there's one more. But wait, there's more.
Da, da, da.
Yes, exactly. So there's
Call in the next 20 minutes.
Right. So there's this little provision that's in the First Amendment that most people aren't aware of. It's called the heckler's veto. And hey, good morning, Mike Toller. I got a shout out to Mike Toller, who gave me this wonderful resource that I want to share with you. So the heckler's veto, you put it up on screen here. It's the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. These are things that we went, oh, hey, wait, we need to include this in there. So these are the first 10, and these were actually drafted by the framers of the Constitution who wanted to have a Bill of Rights go with it. So these are the forefathers, all the people on Fox News that they talk about being respectful of. This is what they wrote. So the heckler's veto talks about if me, Andy, and 10 other people are out protesting, and I decide to do something crazy stupid like start rioting and destroying things or saying some crazy things about the government and whatever else, I can be subject to arrest because of my illegal action. However, the government can then not take out my actions on Andy and the other people. Meaning if Andy and the other people are peacefully protesting, they cannot use force against those people. That is the heckler's veto. So what have we seen in Portland and all of these other cities over the last few weeks? Peaceful protests that have then been turned into a violent skirmish because of police officers, that is the state or federal, going after peaceful protesters. That is highly illegal. It is unconstitutional, and it violates your First Amendment rights. Okay, everybody got that? Heckler's veto. Please don't take my word for it. Google it. Heckler's veto. So, okay, so Mike chimed in. He said, and I don't know what that is, Mike. COFSM. It's too early. You gotta spell it out for me like third grade. I just can't do it this morning. So so the heckler's veto, I think, to me it was kind of that aha moment, because how many times have we heard Trump and all of his acolytes talking about Antifa terrorists? So here we had the lead up to making an excuse to shut down peaceful protests, right? And whether it's the Boogaloo Boys doing some shit, if it's the alt-right, if it's white supremacists, if it's Antifa, arrest those people, do what you got to do. But the other, 3,000, 4,000 people, you got to leave them alone. And we saw this in Aurora, Colorado, when they were doing the memorial for the young kid that got shot by police. You had people out there with cellos and violins paying tribute to his love of music, and the Aurora Police Department came in and started beating people and pushing them out. That is a First Amendment violation. They cannot.
I heard that the excuse they used was the viola player played the wrong note.
Which is typical. Way to go, Viola. So, oh, Mike Toller, he's given a shout out when we talked about freedom of religion. Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah. So our third renewal of our wedding vows was done by a minister of the Church of Flying Spaghetti Monster under the Principia Discordia faith. So it was a touching moment. Anyway, more than you needed to know.
And definitely a mouthful.
Yeah, but I got through it. Okay, so then the other one, 10th Amendment. 10th Amendment. This is number 10 in the Bill of Rights. 10th
Right.
Amendment. And we
On a scale of 1 to 10.
It is the 10. So in the 10th Amendment, it's pretty simple. What the framers of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights said, okay, anything that has not been specifically delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited to the United States. When they say United States, they mean federal. Nor prohibited to it by the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Okay, so let's remember, these people just came through this batshit tyranny and fighting for their lives and, freedom. So they went through all of that, and they thought it was so important to put this in there as number 10, saying anything that is not enumerated or written out for the federal government automatically belongs to the states or to the people. So, in theory, it's kind of the same thing. So why does that matter? That matters because of what we're seeing across this country, particularly in Portland. You have federal troops who have manufactured their legal cause to be there, infringing upon the rights of the states. How do we know this? Because the governor of Oregon asked them to leave, and Wolf, as acting chief of DHS, said no.
Which is in the Constitution.
Right. So when you have a federal agency refuse the order of the governor, who is the highest authority in the state, now you have a problem. They are actually violating the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution.
And let's also make sure that we emphasize that that's not only unconstitutional, it's highly illegal.
Right, and this is what it means to be unconstitutional, meaning you are violating the highest law of the land. It's illegal, right? But don't take my word for it. So, let's see. There is a lawyer, and thanks again, Mike, for this resource. He does this little legal piece on YouTube, and it's called Legal Eagle, and he actually tackled the Portland thing. So as I was going through and doing my research and everything else, he actually hit me to a couple pieces of law that I hadn't found yet because I'm not a lawyer. So it was nice to have this resource and then to fact check him and find out this dude's actually right. So I clipped a little bit of this segment, but I highly recommend that you go out and watch it. And I'll try to put a link in the comments so that you can see it. But it's Legal Eagle, and he did this cute little show on Portland. He had his sister out there who was apparently with the Wall of Moms. So let's see here. Let me see if I can get this up and running. 1 second.
DHS memo authorizes intelligence collection of Americans in order to protect statutes and memorials. The Department of Homeland Security says that their Intelligence and Analysis Office is, quote, collecting and reporting on various activities in the context of elevated threats targeting monuments, memorials, and statues. And it gives legal guidance concerning the, quote, expanded intelligence activities necessary to mitigate the significant threat to Homeland Security posed by such activities. Again, we're talking about statues here. The intelligence collection is authorized to prevent, quote, damage sufficient to impede the purpose or function of monuments. If you know how to impede the purpose or function of a monument or statue, please tell me in the comments. And of course, the pattern continues again. DHS is apparently making plans to send over 150 agents to Chicago.
There you go. So there was my segment. And thank you, Mike. He posted it in Facebook. So I'm going to go ahead and post it to all of our streaming channels so everybody can see it and enjoy it. But I just love that segment because he just breaks it down pretty easily. And he has this really nice segment on all of the lawsuits that have already been filed and more to come against the federal government, Chad Wolf, and the whole collection of federal troops. So, Andy, when we talk about these federal troops, this coalition of the willing that Acting Chief Chad has put together, any idea who these people are? What agencies they come from?
No. I think I heard that at one point earlier in their careers, they all came from boy bands.
That would probably make sense. And yeah, and it explains why they are willing to just follow orders even though they are violating their own oath. So from what we understand, it is part of the U.S. Marshals. You guys should know better. You should absolutely know better. You at the very least have a framework of law that you're supposed to adhere to. But then it's also Border Patrol, Customs and Border Patrol, federal prison workers, and what was the other one? TSA agents. So none of these people, like, okay, so when you see like a want ad for a job and it's normally just above the minimum wage, they're like crappy jobs. Go work at the TSA in the airport, right? And this has been the long-standing. This is our front line of defense. These TSA workers who aren't paid well, are treated like crap. Well, you take those people now and you put them in fatigues and give them non-lethal weapons to go and just randomly shoot people. What could possibly go wrong? Right?
Oh, the other thing that happened, right, is that I'm forgetting which circuit judge ruled that these policemen, or for lack of a better term, cannot fire on official observers and members of the media.
Which they had been doing. And
right, but now they're not supposed to, right? And so if you're one of these federales, as I like to call them, you have to discriminate who you can fire on, because as far as you knew, everybody was fair game, right? We just put some garbage out front like it's garbage day, and then around 11:30 at night, we light it on fire, and then that's our excuse to start hammering people. Well, now a judge said that there's some people that we can't do that to. What do we do?
You could never not fire on legal observers and journalists. That was supposed to be a thing, which is why all the journalists and news outlets, was the Portland Mercury went, what the fuck? no, you're not supposed to do this. And now there's, so yeah, you had a judge have to come out like somebody's mom and go, no, honey, you can't do that. That's against the law. So we have like remedial legal school going on for these folks that now have weapons and tear gas and chemical warfare being used against American citizens. This is so ass backwards as to be laughed. You could never were you allowed to fire on journalists. And then the next one that came out yesterday was when Portland police and the federal officers were destroying medical tents. So you had tents where people were giving first aid and you had medical equipment. They destroyed it. So
Not only that, but they were spraying them with mace, so they could not be used ever again.
yeah, so the other part of it was, you remember when you and I were talking about that photo op that Trump did in DC, where the exact same thing happened, and it was the priest that we were trying to get on the show because she was out there with first aid and had a first aid stand in front of St. John's Church. And
Right.
they were maced, all of their stuff destroyed, and they were pushed out so that Trump could walk in there and do his photo op with the Bible. So this is a repeat, but now you have to have people go, no. So it just, all the shows that we have had previously where we've had attorneys on telling us that justice is only for those who can afford it. So nothing is illegal until you bring a case, is apparently how this works. So just that, you and I understand that you shouldn't fire on a journalist, maybe not a doctor. Apparently we need to take people to court now to impress upon them that, no, you shouldn't do this, right?
Well, that's always been the case, right? In order to keep rights, federal rights, intact, you always have to defend it from attack from other places, right? And it's constantly how the system works, right? And we know that it works that way because there are only certain individuals or groups of people in society that can afford to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which perpetuates the who gets things done and who can't.
Right. Absolutely. And Mike just posted another link here, which I saw this, but I hadn't read it. But the Department of Defense said that it's concerned about law enforcement dressing up in Army uniforms. Yeah, right. So because I can go to any military surplus and buy some old camo and walk around. So like I could be down in Chicago with a flak jacket and all of this other stuff, pretending to be one of them. And we actually saw that in Chicago. We have video. Chicago is not an open carry state. It's a concealed carry. You've got to keep it with you. So we saw Chicago police officers doing what they do. And here comes a guy walking up in military. He had like a green t-shirt and then fatigues. And then he had an AR style rifle with him, plus a bandolier with, I'm assuming, some extra ammo in it. Who knows? But he walked right up to police, made a comment to them. They nodded, whatever, and he walked away. And everybody in Chicago went, that guy is breaking the law, and you just let him walk away. Because we recognize that these militia people want to play military. They don't want to pay the cost of adhering to the law and their oath and commanding officer. They just want to feel special. And this is part of why all of these people dressing up in military gear is kind of a problem, especially when you don't have your name on it.
Well, and when you're a corrupted system, right, you have to realize that when you're armed with something, right, and you're trying to keep your corruption intact, or at least sort of partially hidden, a gun isn't a dangerous weapon. It's a sign.
It can be. Yeah, I mean, like anybody who leaves the house and feels like they need to have an AR weapon to go to a 7-Eleven makes me kind of iffy. A little bit.
You know my opinion about what they're compensating for.
Pretty much, because as a citizen, right? If I'm going to 7-Eleven to get my Slurpee, and I turn around and there's somebody with an AR weapon, I don't know if they're just showing it off or they're there to rob the place, shoot it. I don't know. This is the situation we're in now, which is why we are a concealed carry state. So that when I turn around from the Slurpee machine and I see somebody, there is not a threat, a credible threat standing in front of me. It's just my neighbor, right? so, so this is kind of where, this is why we have to identify. And Legal actually, in his little podcast on YouTube, or not podcast, but on his YouTube, he talks about that, about how in the military we have soldiers in Iraq who have their names in English and in Arabic. So, and he makes the point, so is ISIS less dangerous than the Wall of Moms in Portland? It just
Apparently so.
yeah. So here's David. You're right, you don't know. Thanks, David, who brought in that wonderfully insightful non-issue comment. You're right, you don't know. So what do you mean, David? You can't, if you're going to post a comment, you have the space there to enumerate your idea. So
If you can.
yeah, try that again, David. I don't know. So
So while we're waiting for David, we can talk about last night. There was this lovely young lady that was live streaming the protests in Portland, and this you could tell that she was a seasoned veteran of these protests, because it was kind of like taking a walking tour, with a guide, because showing us where usually everything takes place and the order of events and what happens, where people stand, why this is here, where the federales come out when they come out, and why they come out, and the garbage bags that are on fire and all this stuff. So it was very informative, and it's absolute must for people to watch. But of course, the problem is that you've got the Trump trolls or whoever that doesn't agree with the protests, that are there, because let's face it, there's only so many videos of Trump drinking with water with two hands that you can watch before you get bored. So they're out and looking for stuff like ours, that they can control in their monosyllabic means of typing. And of course, they're not so much upset with the people, but they're upset with the violence, right? When we talk about violent protests, a bunch of guys leaning against a fence and shaking it, 3-year-olds do that, right? They stand against a fence and they shake it. So you're advocating for the rights of a fence over people, right? By saying that they're trying to tear the fence down. When we're talking about property rights as opposed to human rights. Stop believing the propaganda. Human beings matter more than a fence or a pile of garbage or even a federal building.
Well, and that was the clip that I showed where they were talking about the federal troops are there to protect federal property and a monument, right? So we have now said that this statue is more important than due process and equal protection. And I think that is where we got to do a better job of taking it right back to the fundamentals here. It is about due process and equal protection. And now that we have an understanding of the heckler's veto, these three things solve all arguments, right? So I don't care if you're a Trump supporter. I don't care if you're a libertarian. I don't care if you're a full-on Nazi fascist. If you are in this country, you are governed by the Constitution. That is the highest law, right? that stops all arguments. So with those three things, either we apply these equally or we don't.
Yes, you can't cherry pick them, right? The equivalent of what you're arguing for in videos like these at the protests is like looking back at 9/11 and saying, I'm not upset about the 3,000 plus people that lost their lives. I'm more pissed that those two really nice buildings fell down.
Well, and so we have the same argument right now with the blue MAGA folks on Medicare for All. They're like, well, you know, ACA is awesome and we love it, but damn that Trump for 100,000 people being dead on COVID. And I'm like, wait. ACA has been in place for 10 years. It was sold to us as an incremental, meaning step one to get us to where the rest of the world is with a nationalized program. 45,000 people died every year over those 10 years, most of whom had insurance and couldn't afford to use it. So you are going to point the finger at one side for a horrible situation, but neglect to look at this other policy that was doing the same thing quieter and a little bit slower. So this is part of where we have such a divide in our thinking. Apply the logic equally. And I think everybody's going to be a little happier with this, right? So the building doesn't matter as much as what it stands for. It's a symbol of something. We can rebuild a building. The statue doesn't matter. The fence doesn't matter. The people matter and who we say we are. So, Andy, I think you're 100%. But I just want to put up real quick here. Let's go with Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff, because we're just talking about, you know, what you say versus what you do. So we had Congress come in with a bunch of votes, and there were 5 amendments proposed to the military and defense budget. One of them was a proposal to reduce the defense budget for the military specifically by 10% and use that money instead for homeless people, homeless vets, for healthcare, for schools, for things like that. 10%. It got voted down by Democrats and Republicans, so it did not pass. And there were a number of other provisions in that, like I think it was it Jayapal? Or no, it was Ilhan Omar who proposed.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, getting out of Afghanistan by February 2021. We still have over 8,000 troops in Afghanistan, and they're largely guarding the heroin trade.
And then monuments, apparently.
Apparently. So rather than bringing those sons and daughters, moms and dads home, the Senate said no. And that was also by bipartisan support. So Republicans and Democrats said, no, they cannot come home now. So we were initially like targeting to February. We don't know when they're coming home now. So pay attention to what they do, not what they say, which is, you know, the propaganda on one side and then what they do. So I came across this letter that Adam Schiff, our favorite, from the impeachment hearings. So Adam Schiff sent this to Chad Wolf and Brian Murphy, both of DHS. Neither one of these guys have been confirmed by the Senate. They're just appointees. But Adam Schiff sent this letter in part. There are actually 3 pages, and I'll post it. He was really upset that he saw in the news how they're using federal law with their protection of monuments and protection of federal buildings to carry out unauthorized arrests, harassment, and abuse of Americans. So he wrote this really nice letter scathing, and then he's got like 10 different things that he asked them for, and he gave them a deadline to provide that information and all of that sort of thing. So here's Adam on this particular issue, Adam Schiff, and he gave him 12 noon on Friday, July. So today, he has asked them to provide all of this information to the Intelligence Committee in the Senate, which I thought was great. It was awesome. And then I watched the Senate go the other way when it came to the military budget. So they had an amendment to prohibit a certain amount of military equipment sold to police departments, and that failed. But the letter was nice. Thank you, Congressman Schiff. I appreciate it.
Well, it doesn't really hurt anybody. It doesn't take money out of the hands of oligarchs, and it's a really good PR move.
So the word of the day here is performative then. So Adam's letter, while nice, is largely performative until there's some action to back it up, right?
Which, isn't ever going to happen until.
No, and we saw this with Portland's mayor, Wheeler. He did this really nice photo op where he went out with protesters, was standing by the fence, stood in the cloud of tear gas, and was yucking it up and like, oh yeah, this is pretty bad. This is, yeah, they should. And then he made a statement about the federal troops who were beating peaceful protesters, and everybody in the crowd went, no, you asshole, those are your police. That's Portland police officers doing it. The federal troops are over there beating other people. These are yours. And he's like, oh, okay, and walked back in.
Well, that's another thing that our live streamer last night reported on, because she was there when it happened. And apparently the mayor came out with two people who were carrying equipment. And the three of them walked to where the photo op was going to take place. The two people that were with him set up a loudspeaker and a microphone and got everything all ready, then turned around and pretended like they were protesters and were the only ones allowed to ask the mayor questions.
Yep,
Isn't
exactly.
that cool?
So I don't know who his challenger is in an upcoming election, but if you live in Portland, maybe that's something you need to check out. Right? They're civil servants. They're supposed to serve the people. And so I keep coming back to Mayor Bowman in D.C., who told Trump to get the hell out, and he got the hell out. But Wheeler is on TV saying, oh, I asked. Did you? And here's the other reason why I don't trust Wheeler. Because we have Chicago Mayor Lightfoot. And so for those of you who don't know, Lightfoot has been in office not very long.
Since the Mayflower.
Yeah. No, she just got elected.
Oh, okay. All right.
So a little less than a year. So she started when the Portland thing came out, and then Trump said, I'm sending troops to Milwaukee and Chicago. She went, oh, hell no, you're not doing that here. And then it became, well, okay, maybe a few. And maybe, okay, so it's just 150. Now we're up to 200. Yesterday it was 200. And she flipped. So I just want to bring this up here. I'm calling this a tale of two cities. So this is Chicago versus Philadelphia. So in Philadelphia, you have the DA watching what's going on in Portland going, oh, hell no. The Portland DA is like, I serve the people, or the Philadelphia DA says, I serve the people of Philadelphia, and I am here to preserve and defend their rights. And if you violate those rights, I'm coming after you. I'm going to see that you're arrested and prosecuted. And then we have Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago, who got a phone call from Trump and went, oh, okay. So she flipped like that. So here's what she did. And I think this is interesting, and I want to watch this. We have a statue in Chicago downtown of the Columbus statue. It's, Christopher Columbus.
Infamous.
Yes.
Columbus Day.
So the Fraternal Order of Police, the chief of that, a gentleman himself had his badge stripped and he was fired because of he couldn't follow the law. He's now head of the Fraternal Order of Police. He has been hyping this up for weeks. And he is telling all of the defenders, and of course, he gets busted for busing in people from Wisconsin who are known, they're known white supremacists. He's been busted with this before. A couple of the Boogaloo Boys, white supremacists, all of it. He busts those in to protest, because we now have three Black women who lead different parts of Chicago, which is the first time in history. So of course these racists lost their shit, including this gentleman who is now the head of the Fraternal Order of Police. And he would bust in these white supremacists to participate in these protests. Well, he has been hyping up for the last 2 weeks a support police counter protest at the Columbus statue. So what they were trying to do was instigate things, have all of these racists out there, white supremacists, all of these bullshit people from Wisconsin, Michigan, and everything else at the Columbus statue, trying to incite violence with the protesters who are there going, hey, can we get the Constitution applied equally, right? So all of that is happening, and Mayor Lightfoot at least took the statue and took it down. So that happened overnight, quietly. But still, Chicago, we have a wall of moms, we have a wall of dads, we have a wall of vets. All of these people are already organized, peaceful. They're prepared to be for chemical warfare to be used against them. But this is this weekend happening in Chicago. So
Yes, and you only get a chance to surprise people once, and then they're not surprised anymore.
Right, exactly. So what I'm seeing, and a lot of other people have commented on this too, some very fine people, they're talking about people shooting at police and just the violence, and they're just all, and then I'm watching my neighbors go, well, maybe it'll be good to have them here. I'm like,
Maybe it'll be good. Maybe we'll be safer.
right. So I will refer everyone back to, as Andy said, the interview with Stringer Harris. We'll show that again today, because there were some statistics specific to the city of Chicago and the police department. There was, hundreds of thousands of complaints for police brutality, and you saw the heat map on that, but only 7% were ever investigated. Do you think maybe that has something to do with some of the unrest? Maybe. And then
possibly.
yeah, and then on top of that, Stringer Harris himself provides some really insightful commentary on how to enact change. So you have these are not equal examples by any stretch. You have police brutality and death on one side, and on the other side, people who have nothing left to lose, and they've been asking nicely for a very long time, losing their shit, and rightfully so. These two
But they shake fences.
right. Well, these two things together don't always work. So you have somebody like a Stringer Harris who has a law enforcement background with a security company. He knows the law. He knows what is appropriate, ex-military, and he can maintain a strong but measured tone. That's the person you send in. And you put all the people, the rest of the people behind him going, yeah, either you listen to him or you deal with us. And then someone like Stringer Harris can go and negotiate with police. This is how he got the sergeant fired, who was negligent in the Jamel Roberson incident, where here you had a lawful gun owner, a security guard, who disarmed a shooter and then got shot by Chicago police because he happened to be black. So it was Stringer Harris who got that sergeant fired. So again, you watch it. We'll show it again today. But yeah. So yay, Chicago.
Don't burst.
Yeah, exactly. I am not a Bears fan at all.
I know. That's why I said that.
The Bears. Yeah, my son is. which is hilarious to me. Because he always starts out the season just like we started 2020. It was like, yeah, this is it. We've done the rebuilding year. And then right about, game 16, 17, he's like,
Well, you remember back in the old days, the wide world of sports,
yes, yes.
with the ski jumper right?
Yeah.
That's 2020, and we're still going down.
Yeah, it's only July.
Woohoo!
And Andy and I were chatting before we started. I was talking to my husband. He's like, I thought the apocalypse would be a little bit faster. not drag on for a month. He's like, I thought, when you talk about it, you think it's pretty much instantaneous. Sodom and Gomorrah. He's like, this sucks.
Yeah.
So that was all I had for this wonderful. Now that everybody's up and happy, so I do have a joke for you. I shared this with somebody so that we don't end on a negative.
Okay.
It's a dumb joke. I love dumb jokes. So this guy finds a lamp, and of course you got to rub the lamp. It's a magic lamp. Genie appears, and he says, "I can grant you 3 wishes, but first, there are 3 rules you cannot break. First, I can't bring anybody back to life. Second, I cannot make anyone fall in love with anyone else. And third, no wishing for death." And the guy goes, "Okay, great." He said, "I wish that when you fit puzzle pieces together the correct way that they moan." And the genie goes, "Okay, there are 4 rules that you must follow." It was a bad joke, but
that's not bad.
I like dumb jokes. I am a fan of dumb jokes, and right now it's been my therapy. So, among other things,
you've heard me tell the joke about the lady that's in the doctor's office, and the doctor's diagnosed her, and he's about to write up a script for her. Mm-hmm. He reaches in his pocket, pulls out a rectal thermometer, and says, "Oh, some asshole has my pen."
See, that was much better. Thank you. That was a good one. Yeah. We're getting there. So, all right, we're going to end a few minutes early, but yeah, whatever. So, we will be back on Monday morning. Hopefully. We'll see how things progress in Chicago. If you are planning to go out to a protest, please dress appropriately, and this means good goggles, and if you need to tape them on,
shatterproof goggles.
Yes, shatterproof goggles. A good mask, because we still have a rise in COVID. It's not a hoax.
Right. And the other thing you need to realize that although it's been proven that cloth masks do not make your sats dry, right? You do not, your blood does not get deoxygenated by wearing a cloth mask, but it is harder to pass air through. That is undeniable, right? So the best thing to get is a surgical mask, because the surgical mask is designed for people to wear for long periods of time, right? And if for some unknown reason you've got to hightail it out of there because, there's a cloud of some sort of toxic fumes coming towards you, you're not going to lose your shit on the way because you can't breathe.
Exactly right. And this is what everybody needs to know. So there are apps that you can get for, like, especially in a big city, that show you where all the public bathrooms are. I suggest you map that out, because when, not if, but when they start with the pepper spray and the tear gas, you're going to need to find one of those quickly. Because you may or may not have milk or water available to flush your eyes, but it's a good way to go somewhere, separate yourself, put yourself together, and just take care and be safe. Also, don't go anywhere alone, especially if you are a brown or black person, or even a white person who maybe looks a little hippie-ish. You know the left, what you look like. Do not go anywhere by yourself, especially while we have an influx of these white supremacists coming into our city, feeling emboldened. They are looking for people. They get off on this shit. So make sure that you are safe. Make sure your cell phone is fully charged, backup battery, gloves, mask, eyewear, all of these things. Please make sure that you are safe. And, you know, it is your right to go out and peacefully protest. It is your right to go out and just enjoy the city. Just be smart about it. Yeah. So that's all I got. Andy, any parting words from you?
Just one other thing. There's this great invention called liquid skin, right? It's actually comes in a paste form or a spray. And if for some reason you get a laceration and it's bleeding, if you can stem the bleeding and spray the area, it sets very quickly. It's a great way to protect a laceration, stop it from bleeding, and keep it safe while you're running around, because, you know, things happen in a protest. You don't have to go out and look for bandages.
That's a good tip. Really
It's a
good
little
tip.
tube that's about this big. It fits right in your pocket. You just take a little water, clean it off. If you do it right away, there's no way that anything can get into it as far as warding off infection. Give it a little spray. You're good to go.
Excellent, excellent tip. So one other thing, I promised I would do this, and I just posted it in the chat. This is the contact information for an attorney in Portland who has pledged pro bono work for anyone who gets arrested wrongfully by engaging in their civil liberties. This is your free speech. If you get arrested or detained or something happens to you as a participant of the protest in Portland, that gentleman has pledged to help anybody. So, so he has donated his time and talents to make sure that you get equal justice without that $60,000 price tag that limits you. So that is in the chat. I promised I would do that. So that's it for us. And we will see you back here on Monday, 10 a.m. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for the chat and the wonderful conversation. David, when you figure out what you're talking about, get back with us on Monday. Come on back. All right. Have a good weekend.
Protesters in Chicago, stay safe.